So happy holidays, everyone. Welcome to Bee Talks. We are in December. We had Marla Spivak talk to us about bee health and care. I thought that was a magnificent talk she gave. So for tonight, I want to thank you all for being members for CBA and that have supported us over the year. 2023, I hope you continue your membership in 2024. We depend on it for everything we do. We use it for our guest speaker fees. We use it for our bee yard, which I hope you all have a chance to visit soon. And we use it for the operation of our extractor program. And that's about all. Everybody else is volunteer. All of our board members are volunteer. Anything you do for us would also be volunteer. So if you have something you want to do for us, please let us know. And we do have a great team that is coalesced around the bee yard. So I've got great help there. We have some new boxes at the bee yard, which you'll have an opportunity to see hopefully someday. So anyway, let's start this. That I look at our calendar for 2024. Elizabeth, our program chair, has been busy filling that up. I think we have almost everything filled. We have a great lineup of guest speakers next year. I have secured an event venue. So we will be having an event in February at Edgerton Park in New Haven. I'm going to say this with some caution because I'm not sure at this point if they have heat, but they do have a full kitchen and a nice place for us to meet and sort of like be winter bees. So I think that'll be fun. There won't be any agenda. There'll be no speaker. We'll gather for potluck dinner and maybe make some ice cream or something. Who knows? But anyway, so we can gather, talk, be in community about beekeeping, and meet each other again. I'm trying to stimulate some face-to-face in-person meeting because we're not getting a big turnout when we actually do it at the ag station. We used to get, I don't know, 70 or 80 people that showed up, but I think people have attached to Zoom, and I know why, because it's a comfortable format and that you can have in your own home. But I do want to do this thing in February and see how it works out. And you'll hear more about it soon. So thanks for coming tonight, and let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about the bloom calendar. We're actually looking at a late February bloom for our silver maples, or early December, January. Yeah, a late February bloom. That's probably the next thing that you will see coming into your colony in terms, and it supplies the maples in early spring will provide both nectar and pollen. So they're a good deal for us. So you are not, you wouldn't expect to see anything coming into your colonies now, but you know what? It's going to be 50 degrees tomorrow. And the question is whether or not bees will fly. And I'm gonna be up at the bee yard and see if that happens, and if they actually find something to bring back into the colony. Because what I've noticed at the end of this year is with these warm temperatures that we had and bees flying late into the season, all through October or into November, they were bringing back pollen or something. I don't know really what it was. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. See if they actually fly, which I'm kind of thinking you might see bees tomorrow at the entrance. They may not fly, but they may be at the entrance. They do that around 40 degrees or so, which, by the way, is the perfect temperature to keep bees at if you wanted to do that long term during the winter. That is the temperature where they use the least amount of fuel to stay warm, and they don't fly. So it's a very, that's what they put the big bee houses that have thousands and thousands of colonies in them in Canada. That's what they keep them around 42 degrees, and they have to control the carbon dioxide in those enclosures because it would build too high. So that's about it for for the bloom calendar. Has anybody seen, does anybody else have a contribution about that bloom calendar? Or anything else they've seen coming into colonies late in the season? Let's see what we got here.
I saw some pollen last week.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was above 50s. And I just happened to be walking by one of the hives and orange pollen was coming in.
Orange pollen, yeah. Okay.
I have no idea what it was.
Yeah, no, either do I. Probably Shasta daisy. It could have been, I guess it could have been witch hazel. I don't know. Witch hazel blooms or has already bloomed in most, I'm talking about the native witch hazel that grows on the sort of borderline between wooded areas and open fields. That blooms late in December, sometimes late in November, sometimes early December, and maybe in some sort of sheltered, sunlit areas, it may have been blooming a couple weeks ago. Who knows? But anyway, so that might be what it was. We'll get to Lauren's question. First is about dribbling. OAV? No, about dribbling. Not OAV.
It's really about hive IQ.
Oh, really about hive IQ. Yeah. All right. So we got a number of boxes running in our bee yard on hive IQ. But I did want to mention a little bit about thermoregulation at this time of year. So in case you're wondering what your bees are actually doing, in their cluster, and chances are they haven't been they haven't really condensed their cluster down with these temperatures. But like tonight, when it goes down to or like last night when it was 20 degrees or so, they actually did go down very tight. And if you look at some of the thermography studies that are out there, you'll find that bees react to ambient temperatures in really precise ways. Now, there's a question that has just occurred in the bee world, and it's been stimulated by a scientist in England called Derek Mitchell. He wrote a paper, and he's challenging the bee lore about clusters having an insulated shell. And what he's saying is that according to the current thermo the calculations that are available to folks that study this kind of stuff, the bee cluster doesn't qualify as having an insulated shell or being insulated at all, and it acts more like a solid. And so there's been a long history of us saying that bees in cluster are bees in cluster have an insulated mantle, and it keeps the core heat in. And so what that has done from a beekeeping management perspective, it has, in my opinion, discouraged many people from thinking about insulating their colonies. Because if, in fact, the mantle that surrounds the core in the center cluster, if that's actually providing insulation, then why would I have to provide it? And it seems like, bees can survive without insulation and so on and so forth. So we've been over this topic with a fine-tooth comb since Derek put out this fairly provocative paper. And we're digging in, at least I am, and I know there's a half a dozen other folks that are interested in this, in the sort of discussion world of bees, that are looking at, whether or not Derek Mitchell's science is practical in terms of making sense to what our observations have been over the years. So if, for instance, Mitchell is correct, he's changed the thermodynamic characteristics of the way a cluster works. If a cluster is actually preventing any kind of convective current to flow through it. So for instance, when you go from a porous substance to a solid in something like a bee cluster, for you to, if as soon as you stop convection from occurring through the cluster, it acts like a solid. When it acts like a solid, all convective current stops inside the cluster, and then the heat is lost through conduction from the mantle to the outside box. So if you don't have insulation on the colony, there is an argument whether, if Mitchell is correct, and I'm just telling you this stuff not academically, but I want to make sure that you understand that we're still working out this whole thing, and I still think insulation is the best deal. If he's true, it sort of validates the fact that if you insulate your colony, you give them a better chance to survive the winter. Because if the core is actually acting like a solid, then it's conduction that is carrying the heat away from the top surface of the mantle to cold surfaces all around. If the core, if we thought the insulative, if we thought the core, if we thought the cluster was insulated by the mantle, then it doesn't matter as much if you insulate the colony. So anyway, that's the current buzz in the bee deal, and I think we'll work this out and figure out what's right. I like Mitchell's math, and I like his, well, I can't understand Mitchell's math, but it certainly is impressive. And he's using all of the current formulas of thermodynamics. He's very versed in it. He's a newly minted PhD. And we have a tendency to hold on, and this is probably the whole lesson behind this for us folks, is that don't hold your convictions about bees too tightly, because there's always, the wonderful part of being a beekeeper is we're always learning something new. And in this case, if Mitchell's correct, it validates all of what we have talked about in terms of adding insulation. So with that, I know I probably have confused some people. But anyway, I do give a presentation on it, and I will to the group. And then I'll really get it mudded up for you. So don't worry about it. I'll confuse you more later on. So let's look at what Lauren is saying. Lauren, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi. So I bought one of the Hive IQs
Yeah.
because I always buy, I don't know.
Stuff.
So all of the stupid gadgets. I like it. I like the idea of it. I don't think that it was ready for market. Like there wasn't a mouse guard. There's no shim for feeding. But I got it. I put it up. I have a colony in it. And I don't like to do, I don't do, it's the first time I've ever done dribble. I did dribble because I felt like I had to do dribble because I wasn't going to put in the, whatever it's the InstaVape or ProVape, the hot thing.
In all of that plastic.
Yeah. It's not even plastic. It's not even plastic, right? It's like polystyrene.
It's a high density polystyrene.
Yeah. So the Larobis that I don't think they make the instant vape, they sell it or market it. They have a nozzle that's meant for an Apame hive. Another one of my stupid purchases.
I know, yeah.
I hate those Apame hives, but there is a nozzle. So that you can use the InstaVape with that. But I was just wondering, like, did you just do dribble with the ones in the bee yard?
So before I transferred colonies from wooden boxes into the Hive IQ boxes. So if somebody can search the web for Hive IQ, and yes, it is a type of hive body, and we can get it up, and then they can share their screen and we can get a look at it. So everybody knows what we're talking about. But what we're really talking about here is as I mentioned, the high density EPS box, which is designed very well, except it has a few shortfalls. One is it was designed in Australia before they had any Varroa.
Mhm.
So see, there was no need for them to really think this Varroa thing through, but they have asked me to do that.
Oh,
And-
good.
And I am, and I'll tell you what I tried. But anyway, so to get back to your question, I treated the piece because as soon as I looked at it, I said, there's no place to put a vaporizer in this thing, and I vape bees. So I vaporized them in their wooden box and then moved them over into the Hive IQ box.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be practical going forward.
No.
All right. So so what I tried was a little piece of tin and Armando's extension tube that he makes for his vaporizer, which he
What
makes.
kind of vapor, is it a Instavape or like?
No, it's ProVap,
Yeah.
a ProVap 110, but we have the battery operated kind.
Do you sell those, Armando? The extension? You,
He's
Oh.
Yeah, I just made it out of the shaft of an arrow.
It was aluminum.
It's
Yeah,
aluminum, yeah.
It's aluminum. All right. So
Okay.
here's what happened to me.
yeah.
All right, so if you look at the inside of your Hive IQ box, you'll see that, does anybody have a picture of that? What you can see is that the entire thing is made out of polystyrene. There's little yellow plastic rims around each box. Yeah, you can see
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So the entire thing is expanded polystyrene. And then the entrance, show them where the entrance is, down over there, is also polystyrene. So with all polystyrene like that, you can't really put a hot vaporizing device in there, although it fits in, right? You don't want to do that because that gets so hot that it'll melt that EPS. So I thought better to just sort of vape it in with a long extension tube. But the extension tube gets hot and it has to go over extended polystyrene. So I slid a heat shield in there in the entrance, and I looked down inside the box before I built this, because I have 4 or 5 of them that they gave me a bunch of hives. And I looked down inside of it and I figured out the length of heat shield I needed before I was on their little metal plate that they put in the bottom board. And then so when I did that, it had to be a fairly long tube and a long plate. So I had a length in the tube. I used a piece of 1/4-inch copper tubing, and laying on that plate, it was too cool and it clogged the vaporizer. So, because the way vaporizers work is they send that stuff out of that tube. If you're using a ProVap or something that like blows a bunch of vapor in, not the Verox that heats a little cup. If that tube is cool, the oxalic acid will vaporize right in the tube. So I didn't get a full load in. So I'm still working on a way to do it. And I have told them that I think we need a shim that goes in between it. And it'll have to be a shim that's non-conductive. It'll have to be something that we can use, like a wooden shim or something like that, if we want to vaporize this colony. So not easy to use vaporization right now. The only thing you could use is an extended release, which we might have available for us in 2024. There's a couple of really interesting candidates that are coming up, and some of them might be approved for 2024, I'm hoping, and they'd be an extended release that you could hang on the frames, and that would be an oxalic acid and glycerin compound, and that would work well in these colonies. So in other words, so I think vaporization is out on these. And so you did the right thing by doing your dribble, in my opinion. Now, what I like about this colony is the way that it is a total block of insulation. So that works really well. I had some problems with them. They do make a mouse guard.
Yeah, I bought one.
Yeah, but it goes inside the colony. So if you do that, you can't scrape out dead bees in the winter, and you can't, it gets in the way of your winter maintenance.
I put it, there were no directions
So
for
you
how
put
to
it on the
install it.
outside?
I put it on the outside. Like, I don't know if people can see, like, there are some clever design elements here.
Yeah,
Like, there are 3 little doors
yeah.
right in front, and there are magnets, and you can open 1 or 2 or 3. And then these little yellow, like, gates keep them closed,
Or
keep
open.
them down or open.
Yeah.
So I put the mouse guard and I shut the little gate on top of it. So, and
Oh,
then
really cool. I didn't think to do that.
so it's on there, and I can take it off to,
Yeah, that's a
scrape
good
bees or what
idea.
have you.
Okay, all right. So I put it in the slot it's made for, which is inside the colony.
Yeah.
So in that case, you know, so I'm looking at how moisture works in this box, because I think it's a perfect colony for, if you believe in the concept of condensing colonies and you want your bees to live in a more natural environment, although insulated environment, although EPS is not really their environment. They seem to ignore it pretty much. They survive well in it. I mean, they don't survive well. They live well in it. I run them all summer in some, and only in the winter in a couple more.
Bill, what did you use for a super?
Well, they sent me them. As soon as I told them
Oh.
I needed a super, they sent me supers.
Oh, that's nice. I haven't been in, I mean, I don't need them yet, obviously, but I did a little bit feel like they were not ready to launch. No
Yeah,
shim, hard to get the mouse guard,
yeah,
and
Yeah.
no super. If I
Yeah,
can't
we-
get it in the summer, I
yeah.
won't use it.
So you give me some feedback and I'll give it directly to the owner of the company.
Oh, great, I will.
Who's I'm in contact with, and he's given us as much free equipment as we want. So
That's great.
and so I do have supers, and I can get more. I made a shim, a wooden shim that goes on one of those yellow separations, and you can put a Langstroth hive body on it. So
Oh.
they wanted to know if I patent that. So I made a
Oh.
little thin shim.
That would allow you to put a Langstroth, because this is a 9 frame,
Yeah,
FYI,
but you
like
can put
people
a
are
10
looking at
frame,
it,
you can put a 10 frame Langstroth box on top of it.
with the gadget you made.
Yeah, it's really simple. I'll show it to you
I
someday.
mean,
I'll send you.
that's great. Although I think there should be one out of this stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I sent them the design. So hopefully they'll make one. Who knows? I don't know. All
Oh,
right.
that's great.
So,
The other thing I would say about it is tight.
oh,
It
yeah,
is very tight. The bee space is, they must have skinny bees in Australia because it is tight.
yeah, this is what we're gonna look, that we're gonna find out, right? So can we do this thing? And in our environment. And so I think there are a lot less how did you find putting them together? I mean, I thought that they were a little bit cumbersome to put together. And
I
paint.
did not have any trouble putting it together,
All right.
which is surprising. Like,
Okay.
I'm not handy. I don't have any carpentry skills, but
All right.
I thought the directions for putting it together were clear. The directions about painting the bottom were not clear,
No.
to me. I didn't know which part I needed to paint.
Yeah, I think they're gonna come. All right, so is the bottom gonna come painted? Oh no, the top is gonna come assembled from now on, because my top's warped. So they're gonna
Oh,
come
no.
assembled from now on, right? So that's it.
I didn't glue mine on. I just didn't have the glue, and I was like, well, it's on here. The metal part that glues to the,
Yeah, yeah. You gotta, I don't know if you have to glue it down or not. You gotta wait on top of it. It should work, but it's part of keeping that form straight.
okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
so yeah. So what they do is they glue it to the top layer of EPS, that little thin white line way up on top. They glue
Yeah.
that's metal where she has her cursor.
The
They glue that-
lid, this is metal and it's loose, and
Yeah.
kind of fits pretty nicely on top of this white piece, but it's not like actually attached. There are directions to glue it, but I
Yeah.
didn't know like what's the right kind of glue. It's
Yeah,
on
so
here.
they're
I
just
have to
saying
strap it
use
down.
silicone now. But they're gonna glue them, so the next generation, the next, what they call, container will have, that'll be assembled. All right, so let's see what we got. Yeah, so now you know about Hive IQ boxes. Let us fool around with them for a bit before you spend a lot of money on them, and then we'll figure out, if they're decent for you to use, and if you want to, then you can. I put a wind block and I insulated the hive, Colleen. So much talk about upper exit or ventilation should have one. In my opinion, no, Colleen, you shouldn't have an upper entrance. And you can leave them in a state, especially if there's a lot of insulation on the top, an upper entrance just defeats the purpose of that insulation. So I think you should do that. You don't have to worry about moisture or ventilation. The bees will do a very good job of that on their own. In our area, they survive just fine, and they keep the water away from their center cluster, and they use the water that's in the colony to thin honey during the winter and for other reasons of dehydration or metabolic need for water. So I think we're pretty clear at that point that that upper ventilation is a kind of no-no, in my opinion. Peter, when we move, Peter, what did you do here? You moved your frames into a Hive IQ box? Oh,
No, I'm
we
talking
did
about
it. You talk about when we did it, me and you.
Right. And you actually talked about that briefly right after I put this note in there.
Okay. So yeah, they fit in really tight. Yeah, Peter and I did this at the bee yard, and yeah, they were, so what happens when you squeeze bees that grew up in a 9-frame box into a 10-frame box? Well, the shoulders on some of those frames touch. And the bees have a way of excavating that wax out of their way to get at that honey. They will not leave it in there, so you're not doing any damage that way. But I don't like doing it. So the best way to get a 9-frame box started is to draw them out in 10 frames and then put them in a 9-frame box. Because when they're drawn out as 10 frames, the bee space is right, and then you can put them into any kind of other box. If you start putting 9 frames, say for instance, to a 10-frame Langstroth box, you're going to get a lot of wide frames or cross and crazy comb, so it doesn't really work well. You're better off starting with a 10-frame box. But if you were going to start foundation in a 9-frame box, which we don't have in the United States, by the way, we have 8s and 10s. These Hive IQ boxes that we're talking about are 9-frame boxes. You can start it very easily in a box that's engineered just for 9 frames, except we don't have them. All right, so all right. So Frank, how big should the lower entrance be now? Well, I run a 3-inch opening at the bottom all year long. Oh, actually, yeah, all year long. I never change it unless there's some reason to change it. Maybe if I install a package, I might use the 1-inch space for a little while until I know the colony's alive and well in there, just to protect them from robbers and things like that. Yeah, you can use the 3 inches. I wouldn't leave the whole wide area open in any way. You have mouse guards on there, hopefully. And so yeah, so you can run it if you have insulation on it, especially, or even if you don't have insulation on it, you can run a 3-inch entrance, no problem. 3 inches sort of translates into what bees will normally select in our area, again, based on Tom Seeley's work in the Arnott Forest, is what they'll select for an opening for a tree colony. Insulate with mice guard. Okay, all right. Any negative, Bill Ricker? Any negative to doing an early winter vaporization? Nope. Well, tomorrow's a great time. You got 50 degrees, got a loose cluster. They probably won't be flying, but it is a great time to do your winter vaporization. And it's a good time of year to do it too, because you will probably not have any brood at all in that. So it's almost ideal tomorrow. If you didn't do vaporization earlier, tomorrow would be an ideal time to do it. Anytime it gets to be 50 out between now and the beginning of January, you know, you're in good shape. But right after the winter solstice, which is like in what, 7 days, queens will, according to work that our wonderful bee scientist right here in Connecticut, Al Avitavala, did back in the 1970s. He put, I think, somewhere between 30 and 50 colonies. He did this for, I think, 3 years. Maybe it was longer. I know it was at least 3 years, where he set out to figure this out. You know, how long, when do bees start laying? By the way, there's been other work, so you can read the science on the other work that's been done in the same area. But Al did something really special, if you think this is special. He killed those colonies in successive weeks or months. I think it was weeks. Yeah, I think it was weeks. He killed them with sulfur or something, and then went inside each one of those colonies. So so to experiment, he had all these colonies, 35 colonies, and he killed them all at a different time of year during the winter. And then he went in and he counted what he saw in those cells: eggs, opid larvae, capped larvae. And he came up with a wonderful study, which you can't find. And it shows exactly what queens are doing in terms of laying from like after the winter solstice until, you know, March or something. And he did it 3 years in a row. Now, I wouldn't be able to make myself do that, but that science is cruel, you know, and Al did that. Now, I saw an observational study, which I thought was really interesting, and I have it in my archive of science, and I look at it now and then, and this one was observational. So they went in and pulled frames and looked at them, but they found something similar to what Al found. So lots of brood building as the winter goes on. So, you know, and if you folks are fortunate enough to have a thermometer in your colony in a position where it's actually measuring the temperature of your cluster, you will notice the change in temperature when they have bees in there. That's another way to do it. You know, when they have brood in there, because they'll have to keep that at 93 degrees or so, and you'll see the rise in temperature, and then you can tell. Peter, you see that on your records? Do you look in the wintertime for temperature?
Yes, I have it running right now. So the bees are in the lower deep, kind of in the middle,
Yeah,
and I have a sensor above, you know, sitting on the frames of the lower brood box, and it's consistently 70 to 75. So it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
in the cluster, but it's above it.
It's above the cluster and it's 75 degrees. That's why when we talk about thermal regulation, we say that, you know, the average is about 85 degrees, because we count this time when they don't have brood, and they keep there's no reason for them to keep the brood nest at 93 degrees if there's no brood to rear. You know, they're very comfortable at 70 degrees. You know, so they are thermoregulating, but they're not in brood rearing. So you're going to let us know then, Peter.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting to see what happens when we get into February. February gets really interesting. March, and it starts to go back and forth, and then the bees start moving up.
Yeah.
So right now I also have a sensor above the top bars of the upper brood box, and those on cold nights, those will get down to like 40. So they're nowhere near the top box right now.
Yeah, you're probably you're just probably measuring like the heat dome, you
Right.
know, like whatever's coming up off the cluster. There's no bees up there now, right? In your
Oh
top.
no,
Yeah, okay. So we did have a classic year for the end of October, Bill is saying that he treated, he did 3 treatments at the end of October into early November, due to the increased Varroa numbers. And, you know, that was like what happened. You know, we ended up with a lot of Varroa at the end of the year, like we always do. And so I'm encouraging folks that use vaporization to put together a regimen that they adhere to all during the season. You can vaporize and do very little harm to your bees all through the bee season. So you can start, I mean, if they're in a real tight cluster in February, you know, forget it. But in March and April and May and all those months, you know, you can put together a little vaporization routine where you go ahead and vaporize for, say, 3 days in a row, every 5 days for 3 times. You know, and you can do that all the way through the bee season. And you don't want to do it. We have one person on this call usually that does it every week or so. But I mean, that's a little too frequently and probably waste your time. But you can do that all through the bee season. And what that does is it will not totally control mites. But we're learning slowly. It took us a while to learn this, that we had to rethink the way that kind of treatment modality works. And because we were all tuned in to thinking we need something that just obliterates all the bees, we never considered that those interval treatments are actually beneficial in keeping the load low enough, stable enough, so you don't go over threshold. You won't kill all the mites, because even though you're doing it at what you might think are emerging mite intervals, it doesn't matter. You know, every day a bee somewhere will emerge. So there's some competition for mites to get into brood cells all the time. So it doesn't work perfect, but it will help you control your bees. And when you do that, you end up at the end of the year with really healthy bees. So that's something that I think people should consideration if they are deciding to use vaporization. Yes, Lauren. And then we got from Teresa. We want to hear from her.
This feels like a dramatic change in recommendation.
Absolutely.
Like I'm knocked over. So I mean, I would sometimes hit them just because I like to see them die. Like in the summer, even though I know, like, oh, like this isn't, but I would just want to bat them back.
I know.
So that is now okay. Now I don't have to hide the fact that I'm
No,
doing
you don't have to. You can come out of the closet on that.
it. Okay, good.
Because,
I'm so excited.
Well, you know, so like I was saying in the beginning about the thermoregulation piece, which I know is hard to understand, but we're trying to get our heads around it. The idea that we had this mindset that we had to kill every single Varroa in the colony with every treatment we gave them, we didn't give enough credit. We actually, the scientists that tested this interval treating just dismissed it, because when they did a roll, they got a mite or two, you know, and they said, okay, so it's not killing all the mites, so it's not worth it. But that's not, I mean, we're finding out something different now. The idea is to make certain that you're keeping the viral transmission piece down low. So yeah, so I hinted that I might be doing this, but I don't know if I was strong enough to let
Well,
you.
actually, what I remember you hinting is the recommendation for the amount of.
Oh yeah, that too.
acid.
Okay, we're
Like-
not even at that.
Okay.
We're not talking about that yet, because we can't talk about that. Because yeah, so if you here's what I can tell you about Cameron Jack's work down at the University of Florida, and he is probably the one that's quoted most for having done the most work to try to figure out this dosage piece. And because he's such a respected bee scientist, he got the EPA's attention. And he also got the attention of many, many beekeepers that follow his work. And he went through, and all I can tell you is what he found. he found that if you use, say, 4 grams of oxalic acid in your vaporizer in per brood box, so that would be 8 grams, right, for a double deep, it's the most effective way to control varroa. And that if you use the recommended dose on the label, you're not doing enough to kill your varroa, right? So, I mean, we have science that backs that. Now, what now? So now we got to talk about the label. So the label's different, right? The label's the law. So we can't say on Bee Talks here that we're going to make a bunch of people scofflaws. We can't do it because, you know, you're supposed to follow the label. And if you do that, your vaporization, according to the science, that you can yell at Carmen Jack, don't, you know, it doesn't work well. All right. So he's very optimistic that the label's going to change. And I hope he's right. He's going to teach, by the way, a part of our bee school this year, right? A big part of it. So if you're not going to bee school, if you just want to hear Cameron Jack talk about seasonal management of bees, and you can ask him that question. You get it.
And this is just like we would never say to buy oxalic acid that's labeled wood bleach from the hardware store. We could never say that. We could only ever say buy the oxalic acid listed.
Right.
Right. Got it.
Apivaroxol, right? That's the only one you can use. Now, so when I first got onto this subject, I managed to get a hold of the president of Severin, that the company that makes wood bleach. And he said, "Oh yeah, I make wood bleach for all of them." So I said, "But you know, yours isn't as pure." He goes, "It's the same wood bleach. I make it." So anyway, you know, I don't want to. I'm overshooting my authority here, really, really. But yeah, don't buy that stuff from the science labs or anything like that. Apivaroxol, that's what the one you have to buy, but it does support our research, I guess. All right, Teresa wants to know, is there a certain battery that works best for OA vaporization? You mean car battery, Teresa? What are you talking about? What kind of battery, Teresa?
Oh, I used last year. I bought it's just a lawn and garden battery. I guess it goes in a lawn tractor or something.
Yeah.
But to hook up for the vaporization, I have the kind where you're just supposed to hook it to the positive, negative, and positive.
And then time it. You got to time it for what, like 2 minutes and 30
Right.
seconds? Yeah.
Right. And I did a test for time. I put the amount I was going to use in. And
Yeah.
so outside of the hive, I turned on my timer to see how long it took to vaporize. It was 3 minutes and 30 seconds for 2 grams.
Outside.
Which, yeah, and it lots of vapor, worked fine. And then, did the first treatment, and when I pulled it out, there was still quite a bit left in the bottom, so it didn't. And then I just tried it again to see what was going on, and the battery, it did nothing. So I'm assuming that the battery is dead. And
Can I interrupt for a second, Teresa? I went down this exact path. And I bought a trickle charger, and I was still having that problem. And I finally went to this place. It's like a battery place, but like for tractor batteries. It was in Wallingford. And I brought in my OAV wand and the trickle charger that I had, and it wasn't the right trickle charger. And the person there like looked at it, immediately understood it. I had been trying a car battery. He sold me the tractor battery like you described, but a different trickle charger. So for what it's worth, I went through a lot of batteries but my problem was the trickle charger.
Not
Oh.
charging the
It
battery.
was because it was the wrong, there's
Yeah.
more than one type or size of trickle charger. And that
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
I was killing the battery with the wrong trickle charger.
Okay. All right.
Oh.
So, when I was still using the, Verox, I bought a, car battery and a deep discharge car battery, and that worked beautifully because I could do, 10 colonies with that. But you're bringing up the one point about the variables involved in this vaporization process. And I liken it to our roles, like when we harp on everybody using this technique for measuring varroa by using washes of 300 bees. Both that and the amount of voltage you're applying to a vaporization device like a Verox device that requires you to hook it up to a battery. There's lots of variables that you can encounter. In your case, right, your battery was dying or not charged well enough, and you won't get oxalic acid out of it. So if you can't heat that pan up to the right temperature, the profile of the gases that come off of that oxalic acid dihydrate may not be oxalic acid. They could be water vapor and formic acid. They could be just water vapor, right? Or like in your last case, they could be nothing. All right. So when you're doing anything that requires that kind of precision measurement and temperature profile, getting that battery up to speed and making certain that when you go in there in your colony, you have a full charge on that battery, like Lauren is saying, is paramount. Because all you're doing with those kinds of vaporizers that you hook up to a battery is using time. So they've already tested that device back if it's a Verox. If it's one of these homemade devices with a diesel igniter in it, forget about it. That's completely different. I have no idea what you're getting from them. But a Verox vaporizer has been tuned and tested that if you have the right voltage and current flowing through that little Verox cup, you will get oxalic acid to vaporize.
Mhm.
If you don't, then you won't get it.
Okay, I have some homework to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you can do it that way. You can buy a little Honda generator and then you don't have any problems at all. But you wouldn't do that if you have unless you had a lot of colonies to do. Now
Yeah,
we have
no,
solved that with, some of us who purchased the ProVaps, right, have solved that problem, because with a ProVap, you're using AC, and the little computerized device, the thermal regulating device on it, is foolproof. They've been used for 30 years. And what they do is they will bring that cylinder up to the exact right temperature, and then you put the acid in and it vaporizes completely. Now, if you wanted to borrow that from CBA, you could. And
Okay.
all right, so
All right, thank you.
all right. Yeah, so much easier and quick. Yeah, you can do. Now, I have a battery operated version of the ProVap, which comes in my case with 30 amp hour Makita batteries, and I'll charge those. They're 30 amp hours. They're 5 amp hour batteries, and I charge them before I go to the field, and then I can do 10 colonies with it. And I have 2 batteries, so I can do 20 colonies. So yeah. So but if you only have a couple colonies, a battery up to speed and a handheld vaporizer will work fine. Cool.
Bill, I have another question regarding vaporization of one of my colonies. I did dribble probably maybe over a month ago, I guess. And I did it on all 3 colonies, and I got Varroa drop on 2 of the colonies. And the 3rd colony, I really got next to nothing.
Mhm.
And so when I check the whiteboards, I'm still getting finding, Varroa on the whiteboards of the 2 colonies, and then the 3rd one still nothing. And I'm wondering, and when I did Formic Pro on that colony, I got a very minor drop earlier in the summer. So I'm just wondering if I should even do vaporization on this colony. I'm certainly not going to do an alcohol wash on it right now.
No, no, and you won't want to do a dribble right now. It's a little too cold to do a dribble.
Right.
So your only option is vaporization. So yeah. So that's
So
up to you. You can do it or not. You know,
just for good measure, probably do it.
so I'm finished with mine. I won't do another one. I did lots of vaporization at the end of October. I'm not gonna go around, and I had low counts going in, and then I did him. I think I did him. Yeah, I did him again in November, and so that I'm done. Yeah, that's So I'm fairly confident because during the summer I didn't see any signs of deformed wing virus. I didn't see any uh, a lot of dead bees out in front of any colonies except for one. And so yeah, so I'm thinking I'm done, and you might be thinking the same thing. So
Yeah, I think I'm going to do one more just because this was the one I should have done in November.
just because you hate Varroa, and so do I. So.
Yeah, just because. It'll make me feel better through the winter. Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. What else we got?
You said you're done. Does that mean you're done until when? March, when you tweet again? You said you're done tweeting for the.
Yes, I'm done. I'm done treating. Yeah, I won't vape any.
Until.
Yeah, until later on, probably. Yeah. See, what'll happen now is since the bees don't offer much. I talked a little bit about this brood cycle starting in December. Queens will start to lay a little bit. I'm talking about a very little bit, not a lot. So we're talking about like it until you get to February, March, right? You're talking about, just a little patch of brood. And then it goes into fits and starts, so if it gets really cold, the queen will stop laying, and then that brood will be kept. So there's very little brood during the winter. The build starts, March, April, so they can meet in our case, our honey flow in early part of spring. So I don't want to leave you with the impression that even though I've said that there is some brood rearing in the winter, that it's a lot of brood rearing. So it's not. It's a small amount of brood rearing. So that gives the Varroa a little bit of a hard time. So the Varroa need capped cells to actually reproduce. And if they don't have a lot of capped cells, they can't do a lot of reproduction. Now, what happens is normally the Varroa population, if your colony survives, the Varroa population is very low in the spring because of that reason. There's not been a lot of brood for the mites to reproduce, so they can't. So you come into the spring really clean. And the reason there's all kinds of charts out there. You can go on Randy Oliver's site and you can look all of this stuff up, and you'll see where the two sort of bell-shaped curves cross. And it's not until bee brood will outrace Varroa production for the early part of the year. And then the Varroa production, as the amount of available pupa for them to feed on and reproduce in increases, then their population increases. And at some point, their population will grow larger than the population of bees in the colony. So what we're trying to do with this periodic vaporization is to is to beat that down a little bit. So yeah, so you should look at, so let's see, so you should look at, how you might want to manage that piece going forward. How did I start on this? Anybody remember how I started on that line? Because there was some question in there that I thought I knew.
Oh, when do you start treating them in
Oh,
spring?
yeah, when do I start treating? Yeah,
Okay.
thank, I mean, so yeah, so I probably will start giving them a little bit of vaporization. I might even do it in March. Thank you for reminding me about that. All right. Great. All right, so let's see. So Tom, what do you got?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah,
All right, awesome. So this is just regarding your periodic vaporization. So I
Yeah.
tried out a little bit this year, and I think I'm going to go forward with it next year. Is trying to do a kind of a rhythm method with it. So because I plan on doing drone frames, but not for drone brood removal.
what are you gonna do?
So the plan is with drawn out drone frames is to put the drone frame in the colony drawn out and then come back on day 26 or 27 and do an oxalic acid treatment. Hopefully after all those drones merge with the mites on them. That's my thought process on it is like a rhythm method of when I anticipate a high mite load coming out of the cells.
Okay, so you're gonna, so give me a little background on what you think you just want to draw out drone comb, is that what you're saying?
Well, no, it's to produce drones, right? Because I want a lot of drones, but I don't, but I,
Okay.
so I want to produce drones, but I don't want to deal with the mites as a side effect of that. So that's my thoughts is to try and rhythm that along with OA vaporization.
All right, so I have a little something for you to think about. Better Bee sells a single cage. So it's a queen excluder cage. All right, so you can put your queen in there. Well, actually, you have to have drawn drone comb for this. So when you do get your comb drawn, and you have a load of the queen's has laid it up, and it is in a let's see, how did I want to explain this to you? You can actually use that cage to move those drone frames out of the colony. You want those drones, right? Are you thinking about putting together this? Is this for breeding queens?
Yeah, it's for queens. And so I think I know where you're going with this, but
Go
this
ahead.
is
What?
for like 40 colonies. So I definitely can't buy 40 of those cages.
Yeah, you can't buy 40, but you can buy a couple of them.
Yeah.
And so you'll have thousands and thousands of drones that come out of them. Okay, so yeah, I understand you can't do it if you're doing it for as a queen mother yard, then it wouldn't make any sense, no. But for other people
So what
that
do you
are,
think? What do you think of the rhythm, like the
I
time?
think it's a good idea. You're going to produce, so some of the early science, if you look at, you might be want to look at Zach Lamas's work, and he just again is challenging our notion about where mites are attracted. Now, we have said in many sort of repetitive scientific papers that drones are 8 times more attractive to varroa than regular worker bees. I don't think that anybody has actually substantiated that, but that's the sort of word on the street. But the other interesting part that Zach Lamas attached to it is he said that drones carry the varroa in their dispersal stage when, excuse me, did I say drones? Yeah, drones carry the varroa in when the varroa is in their dispersal stage early in their life. So before drones, it takes a while for a drone, once it's born, for it to mature. It takes weeks, right? It has sperm migration to go through, so it's born in 26 days, but that doesn't mean it flies and it's sexually mature until like day 37 or something. So during that time, early in that period, he has hypothesized and did some research that indicates that your varroa population is actually hanging on the back of those bees, those drones that are not yet mature and flying, right? So that when we're measuring our varroa on worker bees, and he said we're missing the boat, so no one's going to go collect 300 drones out of their colony and do an alcohol wash on them. But if Zach is correct, and he's been challenged a little, but his science is pretty good, and and he may be right that you have an opportunity then. I think use that drone cage somehow to eliminate the varroa population and keep your drones, because that's what you want to do. But like I said, it's not practical for you, but for other beekeepers, we might talk more about it. So think about that somehow
Understood. Gotcha. Thank you.
when you're doing that. All right. Great. All right. First year beekeeper here. Darlene, anticipation is killing me. Any advice for the winter? Drink a lot. Drink, if you like red wine, drink red wine, white wine, you can drink anything. Don't do any drugs, and don't do edibles or anything like that, because you'll lose your mind at that point. So just leave it. Yeah, to drink heavy, and then you'll be all right by the time it comes springtime. Yeah, it's a great time. I'm so jealous. I mean, being a new beekeeper, there's so much ahead of you that will be so fascinating and frustrating. And but you're going to get to engage with this extraordinary biological being, and you will see things that will totally amaze you and confuse you. And then by the time year 2 comes around, you'll think you know everything about beekeeping, and that'll be good. Because when year 3 comes around, you'll think you don't know anything about beekeeping, and then you go from there. And if you last that long, you end up learning something about bees from then on. But yeah, so you have all of that in front of you. Do you have bees that you're running right now, Darlene? Are they? Yeah, you got them in. You bought them. You started last year, and now they're in colonies. You have 2, 3, 4 colonies. 1. Darlene. She has, yeah.
Hi, Bill.
Hi.
Hi. Yes, I do. I have 2 hives right now. We
Alright.
got our first hive from Billy Crawford up in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Um,
Good guess.
Our
Good place to
first-
get bees.
our first package. And then a few months later, we received a swarm. We caught a swarm. So I have 2 hives right now that are looking pretty good.
So explain how you caught a swarm.
Well,
In
my
your-
husband
in your
called
own-
me.
in
My
your own
husband
house?
called me from his office and said, "Swarm, swarm, swarm." Bring a box.
See, here's the thing about beekeeping and marriage. I mean, it is one of 2 things. Either it's going to strengthen this bond, or it's not totally wreck it. So, but you're in a good, you're doing, it sounds like you're on a good track there. Yeah. Go ahead. So he doesn't think you're crazy.
No, he
All right,
wants to.
great. I mean, so that's good. I mean, so you're starting off good. All right. So, this was not a swarm then from your yard. You didn't catch
No.
your own swarm. All right. And you hived that swarm. You went out and caught it?
We caught it. We both caught it. It was 3 months after we got our first package. We went and caught it. We
You put it on foundation?
got the queen.
You put it on foundation.
What do you mean foundation?
You put it on frames with foundation.
Oh, no.
What'd you do?
We fed it. We
No.
fed it
I
sugar.
mean, what kind of frames were in the box?
It was a Langstroth, brand new Langstroth hive.
with wooden frames that you take out,
wooden frames
and they had a
and
foundation.
plastic foundation.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Did you put them in
Yes.
foundation? Okay,
Yeah.
and then you fed them and they drew those out.
Yes.
All right, great.
And they did good. And both of my hives right now from April and June, the 2 hives are doing very well.
Well, you don't know anything about them right now. Did you treat them during the year at all?
I did.
All right,
I,
great.
ch-
All right, so I don't think you should worry about anything except, did you happen to figure out how much stores they had in them going into wintertime?
that's the problem. I'm not really sure. We didn't take anything out from these 2 hives. We left everything that they drew out and filled, and then I fed them probably about 2 gallons of sugar water in October to November until they stopped taking it.
Okay, so I mean, that's pretty good. Now, did you put any insulation on those boxes?
I have 2-inch insulation around both boxes. I have the cover boards and an inch insulation in the top cover.
All right. I don't know what else you could do. Any other suggestions for Darlene from the experienced beekeepers here, or inexperienced beekeepers that want to have a glass of wine with her?
Cheers.
Cheers.
I made limoncello.
Oh, limoncello. Perfect. Okay. All right. Anything else can I add? I should have missed something. Come on, I missed something. I think she did some varroa treatments. She's insulated the colony. She fed them a couple gallons of syrup. They ate like crazy this year. I mean, I was broke on syrup. I was up there every day putting in a gallon of syrup in some of those colonies. They just like packed in food. So
I took them. I took the sugar water out when they stopped taking it. Is that correct?
you were using top feeders, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But did you have the insulation on that top feeder at that point?
I believe I may have.
All right. I gotta let this guy in, Ralph Zor. He's like an old friend of mine, and he has a problem with time now. So he's coming in at the last 9 minutes of the call. So I'm gonna give him hell. Ralph, are you there? Anyway, if you have insulation on top feeders,
Yeah.
you get them to last longer. All right, so I mean, you can get them to be a valid feeding management style longer into the cold season, because the heat bloom off of the bees comes right up into that feeder, and with insulation on top, it holds that temperature nice, and bees can get in there for a long period of time. So I don't use anything but top feeders. I never go to any other kind of a winter feed method, because I feed like crazy in those top feeders, and I have them insulated. So when I have them insulated like that, I can use them long, and they seem to get enough syrup, and we're good like that.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Ralph, is that a collar around you? Did you break your neck?
No, I'm just laying down.
Well, you're so old. I mean, I'm surprised you're awake this late.
It's early here. It's only 4:50. I just saw your email, and it was a reminder, so I'll stop in and say hello.
Thank you so much, Ralph. I miss you so much, man. You're out in California, huh?
Yeah, and I just went to the Alameda County Beekeepers last night, and one of the things that I was talking to people about was how things are different here. There's no brood break because there's
Yeah.
a nectar flow year round.
Yeah.
And the bees go to lights at night in the people's backyards.
Photometaxis.
Yep.
You forgot that word.
No, I remember the word.
Okay.
But I forgot the behavior. I don't see it too much in New York. I didn't see it too much in New York anyway.
So
yeah, and we're getting
Well,
ready for swarm season. I'm trying to get a couple of Randy Oliver's nukes. So
oh, okay. Yeah, he's up there. I mean, you're gonna have to drive up to get him?
No, they come down to Berkeley to the biofuel oasis in the springtime.
All right, okay.
I'm trying to figure out how to put a 5-frame deep into a 10
Five frame
frame.
nuke,
No, 10 frame, a 5-frame deep
nuke,
nuke into a 10 frame medium.
a 5 frame deep nuke into a 10 frame medium.
Yep.
You see, that's what California does to you, Ralph. I've been trying to warn you. It makes you stupid.
So
I
you're
mean,
gonna you're gonna hold that box up sideways? Is that how that's done?
I don't know. I'm gonna try to figure. He
I
doesn't.
say, yeah, no, put him in. I think Tom's onto something here. Put him in upside down, then take a chainsaw and just cut him off even.
Okay.
All right, that'll work. And people in Alameda, that beekeeping. I traveled in Africa with a few of those folks from the beekeeping. Yeah, really nice.
Okay, great. Yeah. So anyway, somebody suggested I should just run a 10 frame deep as a brood box, and I don't have to worry about lifting it because that's why I was going to go to mediums to save the weight.
Yeah,
So
and
we'll see.
Randy's not going to give you mediums. He's got all deeps.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen. Yeah.
So we'll see. I'll have to. I hate to mix and match the equipment, but I'm trying to go lighter, and we'll see how it works out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's it's not the dumbest idea I've ever heard. It's close though. I mean, to try to,
Well, let me refine it a little bit.
you know, I think you can don't use a chainsaw, use a fine tool. You know what a fine tool is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
A
right.
vibrating tool and cut them
Right.
all off right level at the bottom of the box. Yeah.
Okay.
You're onto something good. You're really onto something. All right. So while you're here, Ralph, really so nice to see you. And I did get the message about Kim Floten, the former editor of the Bee Culture magazine, died
Yep.
of he had some kind of cancer growth. They're not saying what, but it was such a rapid onset that he never even got into chemotherapy or radiations. He died of it right away. Made it likely liver or pancreatic cancer, either one. And the bee world was sort of shocked of that, and I am too. He gave me my start in Bee Culture magazine. I wrote the first article about a smoker that my friend Michael Lund there found at a tag sale for me, and then I restored and wrote an article and submitted it to American Bee Journal. They rejected it, and Kim took it and published it in Bee Culture, and that was the end of my story.
I remember that smoker. That was a cool old wreck. Yeah.
It was an all copper smoker that Michael found at a tag sale and gave to me. Or I bought from him, I can't remember. But either way, yeah. So the tradition among beekeepers is that when the beekeeper unfortunately goes to rest, that you thump the hives. It's one of the more beautiful beekeeping rituals and piece of bee lore that I have ever heard, in that you're awakening the bees to the fact that the beekeeper is no longer there. So we'll do that for Kim, and I've written a little bit about it, but yeah, so it's a sad thing. Anyway, he was a Connecticut native. I'm not a native, but he was here in Connecticut for a very long period of time. All right, so we only have a couple minutes left, so I'm going to go over some of this other stuff that we have. And in my hives needs to leave some kind of food in February, okay? Other disadvantage to the battery-powered dry stock vaporizers if you use it outside of winter. In warmer weather, when you remove the entrance reducer to insert the wand, a lot of bees may fly out defensively. You don't need to fool around with entrance reducer for the Provaptix. Yeah, that's right, Peter. That's exactly right. They're just so expensive. And I'm glad I'm not like offending anybody with the alcohol piece. It's not a good idea to say those kinds of crazy jokes, but just chalk it off to something just funny. All right, Great Girl's over with a huge win. I found our swarm we caught near the, yeah, so she found this swarm and you hived it on foundation and away you went. Great. So Lauren, goodbye. I missed you then when you were leaving. Let's see what we have. All right, so I think, let's see what else we have here. All right, for mite removal, has anyone in the world, yeah, we tried, no. Well, CO2 to the whole colony, yes, that's been done a number of times, but it wasn't for high mite removal. Because, but it should be, somebody should try that. But what they do with CO2 in whole hives for experimental reasons is if you're going to introduce a new queen to a colony and you don't want to go through the acceptance procedure, you can anesthetize the whole colony with CO2 and walk the queen in and she's perfectly okay. She'll be accepted right away. Why that works, of course, you got to make the colony queenless first. And then the CO2 seems to work really well to get them to accept a new queen. It also, CO2 also stimulates queens if you're using any kind of insemination device and your queen, you want to just start laying, give her a little CO2 and it stimulates her into laying. So CO2 has a really interesting role in bees because it doesn't kill them. It just puts them into an ultra low metabolic rate and they live through any dosage of CO2 that you can give them. I guess if you put them in a pure CO2 environment for a very long time, they obviously would die because they wouldn't have any oxygen. But if you have a mixture of high CO2 and oxygen, they'll live forever in that. CO2 is not a good thing for varroa. So that's an interesting balance there. What we haven't done is what Peter is suggesting. You know, since we're not exactly clear on the science about how much CO2 you need to kill varroa, but they will not live in a high CO2 environment. And I think that's why a cluster that is condensing and using hive gases, their own hive gases in the winter to control their metabolic rate would also be killing varroa at the same time. All right, so Peter, you're going to have to try that.
I don't have enough colonies to afford to do that, so.
Ralph, they're missing you. People are saying things and it's nice commentary, not the kind of stuff I do. You know, they miss you. You know, hi Ralph, hope all is well. Miss you in New York. You know, so you got fans
nice.
out there. Yeah,
That's great to hear. Thank you all.
got fans out there. You can check the screen bottom board, that activity I clean it every 2 weeks. Yeah, I know this, Mark, that's a really interesting observation that Marta is saying, that you can always, if you're missing your bee action, you can go out and collect bees off of your bottom board and you can see what you're doing. You'll see wax debris, you'll see that cleaner wax if they're opening up honey cells. You'll see darker wax, little crinkles, little dust like on the bottom board. You'll see darker ones if bees are uncapping. You probably won't see any of that on now. But anyway, so we're going to say good night to everybody. And Ralph, have a nice night's sleep.